we're drifting apart. We're losing our empathy, or our ability to empathize with one another is being kind of taken away on account of the way we experience our everyday.
Welcome to Midland Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
What if the person next to you was silently struggling and you never knew? Today, we're diving into one of the most urgent challenges of our time: loneliness, isolation, and the moments that change everything. Our guest, Rob Thorsen, turned an unimaginable personal loss into a powerful national movement. As the founder of the HT40 Foundation and the creator of Shoulder Check, Rob is on a mission to make connections simple, human, and life-saving, reminding us that sometimes the smallest gesture can mean everything. If you've ever wondered how to show up for others or needed someone to show up for you, this conversation will stay with you long after it ends. I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Midland Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Midland Financial. Let's dive into the show. Well, I'm super excited today to have Rob Thorsen on the show, and welcome to the Midland Money Mindset, Rob.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
So listen, we're going to spend a lot of time on what you're doing today with HT40 and Shoulder Check. But before we do that, can you share with our listeners a bit about your background? You know, who you are, what you do, and kind of what brought you up to this point. And then we're going to talk a lot about what's taken place in your life recently and what you're doing with your work with those organizations that I mentioned.
Yeah, happy to. Like you said, kind of where I am today is not where I started, but in a way, everything leads, to the present. So my background wise, I'm an advertising guy. I used to run ad agencies in the city. I'm in Darien, Connecticut now. We were in Brooklyn for 25 years. My wife and I both in the advertising business, running agencies. Relocated out of the city around about 2019 to Connecticut, right? Suburbs, a little more space, 2 kids. We found that we were spending more time trying to leave the city every day and get back to the city and all that. It was like, okay, maybe it's time for us to step outside. But it was awesome. Loved it there. We stepped out, moved to the suburbs. When I did that, I transitioned from my agency world role to CPG role. As a matter of fact, I joined a startup plant-based protein business called Aloha, which was awesome. Worked with a friend here in town. And then in May of 2022, that was when kind of our life changed. Our lives changed. My son passed, died by suicide. And that immediately kind of sent a ripple through everyone. And we realized pretty quickly that it was something that we needed to kind of put at the center of our lives and try and make a difference or make a contribution. So I stepped back away from the role that I was doing at the time and thought about how can we make a contribution. And I had a few experiences at the time. I'm sure we'll talk more about it as we go. But I had spoken to someone right after everything had happened, and they said to me, you need to leave this to the professionals. It was a pretty jarring comment they made. And I reflected on that, and I was like, I'm not a mental health practitioner. I'm not a professional. When crisis came, I couldn't see it in my own home. But I did have a professional background. I'm an advertising guy. Right. There's good and bad to everything. And I thought about that, and we're all about, messaging and behavior change. And we thought, what if we could apply that to this world and build a brand that was about kindness and empathy, and hopefully making some behavior change. And that opened up the door of the HT40 Foundation and Shoulder Check. Yeah. So that's kind of the arc of it.
Yeah. So Rob, let's dive right in here. And, as you mentioned, you turned personal tragedy into the mission that you're living for today. And rather than asking a question here, I think it might be more powerful for you to share with our listeners about the moment, about what you went through, and then kind of give them an understanding of, why you're doing what you're doing today and what that mission is all about.
I think the easiest way to say it is when I talk about Shoulder Check and the HT40, they're one and the same. But when I talk about it, the premise is simple, right? We don't always know who needs a hand, but we all have a hand to give. It was the first concrete thought that I had after everything happened, right? So when Hayes passed, it was one of those moments. Now, unfortunately, suicide is a big issue, right? There's a lot of people that take that ultimate decision. If 50,000 people walk that path every year, they've walked 50,000 individual paths to that final decision. But there are archetypes and there are some similarities. And in Hayden's case, it was that thing where if you made a list of 1,000 people, Hayden would have been 1,001. So what he was carrying deep inside, and didn't have maybe even the skills or the awareness or the ability to give it voice, right? So there's someone who he was massively empathetic. He was the guy, and we obviously had the chance to run in similar orbits along the way. The hockey scene, right? Like, so that world. Like Hayden was a big guy, right? He was larger than life. He had a maturity about him that you would notice him because he was the biggest guy in the room, but you would remember him because he was kind and empathetic, which aren't necessarily adjectives you ascribe to that kind of team guy, right? Like the big athlete guy, the big presence, quick-witted, all that kind of good stuff, right? He was an amazing young man, but he was also the most empathetic guy in the room. And I'm sure there's, there's a path that goes down there. We can analyze that, but ultimately and unfortunately, there are no answers to why. Like we're never going to know that. And I think we kind of had this intuitive understanding of that when everything had happened. And we knew that we wanted to make a contribution both to honor Hayes and who he was when he was with us. The most common question that we got or that we heard about, kids were asking themselves, writing us letters or talking about it around their family dinner tables. The question was, who's going to do what Hayes did for us now that Hayes is gone? And it took me a quick second to understand what they meant by that. But what they meant was, like, who's going to be the guy that's looking after us, that's checking in? And when I understood that, I kind of sat with everything that happened, right? Like the world turns upside down. Can't make any sense of it. There's no words for it. And about 3 months had gone by and I went and I said, there's a space here at home outside. And I just went and sat there like 3 months later and I have my little notebook or journal or whatever. I just started writing. Hadn't done that since Hayes passed because I made a pact to myself. Like we just need to sit and we need to, find ourselves in this. And the first thing I made was a dumb little sketch. I can't draw, but I made this little sketch and it was two people and it was one person putting their hand on the other person's shoulder. And on the one side, it said, I could use a hand. And on the other side, it said, I have a hand to give. And that was the idea. Like that was the whole of it. Like just this simple, universal thing about putting a hand on someone's shoulder. Wow. That's what Hayes was doing for his friends. And that's something that we're all qualified and capable of doing. Yeah. When that question came back to us, like leave this to the professionals, right? Like there's nothing, you don't have to be a professional to say, how are you doing and mean it,
right. Yeah.
So that kind of fueled the whole idea. That's how it got started. That's where it came from.
Well said. And I, again, my condolences on Hayden's loss, as you know, not a son in my case, but I lost a brother-in-law to suicide. So, we're all members, unfortunately, of this survivor club, those who are left behind following a suicide. So I can empathize with you and seeing what my in-laws have gone through over the last 20 plus years. So how is HT40 and Shoulder Check an extension of who Hayden was as a person? How do you see that connection?
When Hayden was with us, that was just part of his like natural way. He was a hand on shoulder guy to the point where, and I recognize this, we have, like everybody, a hallway that you walk down and it has like, the whole wall's covered in photos and they chronicle kids from when they were tiny to the present. And even I noticed it one day walking by it in every single photograph from the time when Hayes was 3 or 4 years old to the most recent photo we had of him. He's always in the middle and he's always got his hands on the shoulders of the people around him. He was just a bring together guy. And, like I said before, there's so much that I'm sure could be studied or analyzed or understood about that from a psychological standpoint. I see it as him ultimately just trying to put more of what he wanted in the world. He was doing it himself and something that he intuitively needed, but again, maybe couldn't give voice to it, didn't know how to, or I don't know where that fits in there, right? But that's who Hayes was. That's what he did. Like I said before, who's going to do what Hayes did now that he's gone? And the answer is we all can. We can all do the thing that he was doing. And that then gave that's at the core of what our idea is. And, as that grew, we wrote a mission for the HT40 Foundation. And, that came first, right? So we incorporated as the HT40 Foundation with a mission we gave ourselves to both inspire and enable young men and women to just be there for one another through small acts that have big impact.
Yeah.
And those two words are important: inspire and enable. And we're very fortunate insofar as my world, my wife's professional world, that whole world came to us and said, we want to be a part of whatever happens next. And then Hayden's whole world came to us, which is the hockey side of it. And they said, we want to be a part of what happens next. And all this stuff just organically came together at the same time, where we worked with our creative folks, we have agency partner, which is amazing, right? For us to have a pro bono advertising agency partner helped us get out of the gates from day one, looking like this idea had been around for 20 years. But they kind of authored the idea of the shoulder check.
Right.
And at the same time, our hockey world, that's, my son played for a team in Stamford. If people know, it's called Mid-Fairfield is where he finished. He was on his way to Boston. He was going to go to prep school and that kind of stuff. But he finished at Mid-Fairfield. So that's Gary Zegers. Trevor Zegers' father, who runs that program, came to me and he said, look, when you're ready to do something, not only we, but I want to be a part of it. And Hate's trained at a gym, which I'm sure you're familiar with, called Prentice Hockey Performance, which is in Stamford as well. And Ben and Ashley, who run the gym, when you walk in there, they have the jersey of every professional athlete that's ever trained there on the walls. There's 300 jerseys that run around. It's the most impressive thing you'll ever see. And unbeknownst to me, Ben made Hayden's jersey, and it's the first jersey you see when you walk in the door. And he did that because, the Mid-Fairfield colors are the Rangers colors. People would say, I don't know Thorsen from the Rangers, and that would just give him the chance to tell Hayden's story. So all these guys were like, we want to be a part of it. And everybody just got together and the idea kind of got started with our showcase idea.
Yeah. So tell us about the signature event, which you're talking about is your shoulder check showcase. Now, you told us, how that came to be. Can you tell us what that day is supposed to be about and share what the 2026 event will look like?
Yeah. So that's exactly it. So when we started working on our idea, the shoulder check from a communication standpoint, and we've done a lot, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So we're starting year 3 now. We just finished our 3rd year since we had the original idea. The showcase kind of marks the anniversary. Uh-huh. So the showcase is how we launched the idea initially. So we called it the Shoulder Check Showcase, and we were really lucky. We had 30 NHL guys who came out and played in a charity hockey game here in Stamford, which is local to me. And we created that event. And that first year was really cathartic, right? There was a youth hockey game. My son was a 2006 born player, right? The language you talk in terms of birth year. It was all his friends and teammates played an exhibition game. But then we had this ceremony moment. And it was almost like an experiment where Dave Maloney, who's our MC, and Arda Ocal from ESPN, would go out, introduce all the NHL guys. But then we had a moment where we said, we're launching this idea called the shoulder check. And we asked everybody in the building to put their hands on each other's shoulders and just repeat after me, I promise to reach out, check in, make contact. It was an experiment to see if this idea would resonate. And it absolutely changed the tenor of the building. There's 2,500 people there. And it was like the shared uplifting moment. And then after that, we played this amazing NHL all-star level exhibition game, which is incredible. And all those guys were on the ice with hands on shoulders, making the pact. And there's PWHL players that are a part of it. And everybody participated in this shared moment. And in addition to all the amazing photography we have of the players and the action on the ice, some of my favorite photos from that event are just photos of the crowd. You just see different people. And it's in my presentation, right? Because I go around now and, to help get the idea going, I present it a lot. But it's the first page of my presentation and it's the last. I say, look at all these people. They don't know each other. They're different generations. They're wearing different jerseys. They have different favorite teams, young, old, and they have each other's hands on each other's shoulders. Everybody has an ear-to-ear grin on their face. So he saw just the power of this simple gesture, and it was a demonstration both to give a hand and receive a hand. And that's the point of the shoulder check. So the showcase helps bring that to life, and it brings people together. It's this community event. All the players avail themselves to everybody. They sign autographs for an hour before the event. We have like this midway, we call it, out front, where this year there'll be a band, there'll be a beer garden, there'll be different partners with tables and tents, whether they're, everything from the PWHL teams, the AHL teams, the NHL network, they'll all be there. But then also partner organizations that are there helping deliver the message through their own work. So everybody gets to experience that for like 2 hours. Then this year it's going to be at Sacred Heart University, which is amazing. It's July 30th. Then we'll be able to go into the building and we'll be able to sit down, and yet again, it's going to be an NHL All-Star roster out there playing this exhibition game. And it's a lot of fun, too, because we get to do whatever we want with it, arbitrarily shift to 3-on-3 or do whatever, shootouts and that kind of good stuff. So every year it's been a great success, and hopefully this year we'll build on that and it'll be even more of a success.
Amazing. So it's July 30th at Sacred Heart this year, 2026. Yeah. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. And you mentioned Ardo Ocal. We had him on our show as a guest. I don't recall the episode, but another great human being. So
another great guy. And he just like everybody else that's been a part of this, is people just saying, hey, I'd love to get involved. Yep. He reached out to us, which is incredible. He's like, I'd love to be a part of what you're doing. And that's true for everybody. Like every one of those professional hockey players, like they are there because they choose to be. Yep. Everybody who helps make the event work are there on a volunteer basis. And then we use that, it's of course our big tent pole, right? And we get a lot of great press coverage and all that good stuff. That's there to inspire, right? So like inspire and enable. Those are the key, verbs for us. And people hopefully see that message. Well, I know they do. And then they take it home with them. And it's our job as the HT40 Foundation and Shoulder Check to support that idea and that notion coming to life in whatever context people want to bring it to life. So it's got a grassroots. So we have the tentpole activation, and then it's all about grassroots activation all year round after that. And so far this year, in the first couple of months of this year, we've had, I think, somewhere around 125 different activations already this year, which is incredible. I feel the momentum building behind it. And it's just people saying, like, this idea resonates with me. I'm going to bring it to my team, to my school, to my community.
Yeah, well, we brought that idea, as you know. I'm involved with the hockey 24-hour hockey marathon on Labor Day weekend here on Long Island, and Jim Flanagan, who's the founder of that event, brought Shoulder Check to that event, and we had patches on all of our jerseys. And at the start of everybody's first game, everybody did the same thing. We put a hand on the shoulder of the guy or gal next to us to kick off that event. So, we recognize the Shoulder Check Foundation at that event too. So it's definitely getting out there.
Yeah, I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah.
And like you having firsthand experience with it, right? It's just a simple moment. It's something everybody can do, and it's just a reminder.
100%. Now, one of your most recent initiatives was to film the singing of Lean on Me. How did you go about to get the rights to use that song, and what has that moment meant to your cause?
Yeah, so that's our kind of agency world's contribution. So each year we think of it as our job is with our agency partners to add a new tool to the toolkit. So the first year was just about launching the Shoulder Check as an idea with the game, and now that's every year. So this year is the 4th annual showcase. Our partners and my friend Chris Colton now at Droga 5 had originally had this idea of like, what if we could get a ensemble cast of NHL guys to come together and sing the song Lean on Me? And we had that idea right in the beginning, and it was like, hey man, that could be so powerful. But at that point we were just getting started. We didn't have the means to engage the right folks to do it. So my friend Chris called me back up, last year, maybe around this time, and he was like, we should revisit this idea. So all right, we should. And it was just, they reached out to Bill Withers' estate, explained the idea, and they were like, do it.
Wow.
And they were like, go for it. And, of course, there's a little bit of negotiating, that kind of thing. But ultimately, they gave us the rights to use the song in, certain contexts with rules and that kind of thing. Then we reached out to, just again, like I was saying, that's our professional skill set. So we just kind of activated that machine, and we had a commercial director come in from Los Angeles who was like, I'm here for this. Let's do it. And then we just reached out to the players themselves. And at first it was they were like, you want me to do what? And we were like, let's just give this a try. We had one day. It was the actual day of last year's showcase event. And one of the things that we get to do with a lot of the guys, the players who come in from out of town is, we take them, play some nice rounds of golf. They're all amazing golfers. And if you're a golfer, it's one of the most amazing sights. When you hit the range before the round, you will never see more lefties on the range when they're all out there. And it's a pretty cool thing to see. So anyway, I had the chance to go there, and, I played this one time and met everybody afterwards and kind of pitched the idea to them. And they were like, yeah, we've kind of heard about this. We don't really understand what it is. And I was like, look, we're not, nobody has to have like an amazing voice, but here's the idea. The day of the event, we're going to have this crew. We're going to have a bunch of different setups, like in the gym, on the ice. And if you'd be willing to just step in and like hum, sing, say a bar, see what happens. Right. And I also I happened to be with Marty St. Louis, and I told him about the idea, and he was like, yeah, that's interesting. And I was like, if you want, swing by the gym, if you would love to have you. And he was like, man, good luck with that. Kind of like, sure. But sure enough, he came by the gym 2 days later, and he stepped in, and he sang a bar of the song. Right. And so did all the rest of the guys. And then we were like, well, since we're here, let's go to the showcase event. Our camera crew was out on the ice. John Branson, New York Rangers anthem singer, led the song, and people spontaneously turned on their camera flashlights and sang along. And it just came together in this 90-second verse of the song. And when I first saw it, I don't want to say it wasn't going to make you laugh. It was never going to make you laugh. But when we first had it, and I would have meetings and I would do Zooms, right? And I would say, let me show you our latest work. And when you do the Zoom, the screen share happens, you can't see anybody anymore, and then come back. And I would say every time I showed it, I would come back, and the people in the different boxes actually were having an emotional reaction to it, sometimes to the point of tears. And that's when, I gave that feedback back to our team. I was like, I think this is a lot more powerful than we ever gave it credit for. So we rethought how we were going to launch it and that kind of stuff, which was great, right? It was an opportunity. We realized we had something good. And so, yeah, that's been great. So it's run in, NHL buildings, AHL buildings. It ran, we just launched it online. Again, all donated media. There was no money behind it. The NHL, NHL.com helped share it, pushed it out. It had like 1 million views within the first week or so, totally organically. And it's still in circulation now.
What a great video. So check it out if you're listening to this. And, you mentioned having tools, and it sounds like this, video has become a tool also to some degree. What's been the most impactful tool that your team has created?
It is the simplest thing. It's the core idea. I think the reason it's resonating is because it's as simple and universal a thing as there is. Just a hand on a shoulder. That's the primary tool. And we mean it literally. It's one thing to symbolically, right, change a social media profile or, make it a certain color for a certain day and that kind of stuff. And that's great, right? Those things are generating awareness. But what we really wanted to do was first, be complementary to all the great programs that are out there already, right? There's all sorts of people delivering real services to people in need at that level. And there's also a ton of great programs out there that are a lot bigger than the program we've created so far that are delivering content and programmatic content, right? Like, so take like Morgan's Message or things like that, right? That have campus chapters that are doing great work. And our thought was like, how can we don't need to compete with anybody for mindshare. Let's complement that. I think it was kind of like steal this idea. Like, it's just a hand on a shoulder. Yeah. It's just an idea, and like manifest it in any way. Like, if you see value in this idea at work or at school or as a team or wherever in a club, like, our job is to support it coming to life for any individual or group in whatever context. I say it all the time, like, a story, right, has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but an idea has a beginning, it has an inspiration, and then it evolves based on who gets involved. And the more people that we can involve in this idea, the more it's going to evolve and grow. And our job, like I said, is just to support that happening. So I see that resonating. Right? The other tools are there to help, to teach about it, to remind people in different ways. But ultimately, I think the most valuable thing is just this simple notion of put a hand on someone's shoulder and ask them how they're doing, because you don't know.
Let's pause for a moment. What actually brings you joy? It's something most people never think about, yet it shapes how your life unfolds. You're busy. You make responsible choices. You even plan ahead. But have you slowed down long enough to ask if what you're building supports a life you enjoy living? That's the reason I built my YouTube channel, to help you bring more joy to your money journey. Sure, we'll talk about all the essentials, but my real goal is to help you connect your finances with what brings you joy, because money is the tool that funds the moments that matter. If you want to explore that connection more deeply, visit my YouTube channel at Larry Sprung. You have built a pretty robust online presence. And I'm sure that you get inquiries from that presence about either people in need, struggling, or maybe they know somebody who is, and that's not necessarily at the heart of what you do. How do you make sure that having this online presence that ultimately will attract these inquiries, how do you ensure those referrals connect with, the right end folks that could help them in their, in a potential time of need?
Yeah. We realized that pretty quickly just by stepping into this conversation, even though we say all the time, like, this idea is pre-intervention, right? The goal of this idea is just to start conversations. And, everybody's worst day is their own personal worst day. And of course, there are ultimate bad days. But then there are other days that are just about, like, getting a bad test result, or maybe being broken up with, or maybe letting in a goal, right? And so, that's a huge spectrum. And we're trying to build something that's way upstream, that's just about to, we've tried to anchor our idea. And the original insight for it comes in the form of, it came before the Surgeon General published that report in 2022, which was this crisis of loneliness and isolation. Mm-hmm. That's the anchor for the idea that we're building around, or the cultural context for it. That people, though we're more connected than ever, even our ability to do this here, right? Like tech platforms, social media, AI, everything that's happening, we're more connected than ever. And counterintuitively, we feel more disconnected than ever. And that's kind of, they talk about it in, beyond me, but from a practitioner standpoint, that you find yourselves navigating these paths of despair. It could be addiction. It could be lashing out, irresponsible behavior, obviously depression, then leading all the way to the ultimate horrible outcome, like suicidal ideation or suicide itself. So if we track that all the way back up, and we can find the root of where some of this stuff is coming from, beyond like biological issues that people are having that need medication, like that's well outside our remit. But just people in their everyday lives recognizing that we're drifting apart, we're losing our empathy, or our ability to empathize with one another is being kind of taken away on account of the way we experience our everyday. So just pushing back against that. Now, that said, definitely we've had times when people have reached out, or even at our event, we know that we need practitioners there, because in a way it is a lighthouse for people who will see that and see like potentially that's someplace where they can go because they are carrying something. And on occasion, we've had people reach out, saying, hey, I had this happen one time. I think my granddaughter's suffering. What should I do? So at the very beginning, we had worked with a suicide prevention organization. We have a bunch of language that we get with resources that we share with people. Of course, 988 in emergency situations, get someone on the phone, that kind of thing. Then we even say it in our everyday, we're advocating for people to check in on one another. Invariably, someone will find someone who's struggling. As another example of that, my nephew brought this program to his college. He ran it across for the entire student body. It was amazing what he did. And he had one guy come to him after he gave a presentation. He gave 3 presentations, once each semester, had trimesters. And somebody came to him and said, I'm struggling, I need a hand. And my nephew called me. He was like, this guy needs a hand. I'm going to be there for him. And I was like, man, you're not qualified. You connect him now to somebody who can help him. And that's it, right? Like, we recognize we're all human. We know when somebody needs a hand. We know how to escalate that. In the most critical moments, it's getting someone to 988. It's getting someone to a parent, to a teacher. And I've also seen that now multiple times, where I have people calling, not saying that they know someone who is in distress, but rather their son, daughter, or friend was in distress, but because their friends know this idea, they rallied around him and called the parent.
Right.
That's probably happened maybe 6 or 7 times now directly. And it's the parent calling or reaching out to me and saying, like, it's because the kids have been participating in this idea that they felt comfortable and confident enough to step into that moment and to support, someone who is struggling and to raise the flag with someone who could help. Those anecdotal bits tell us, we know that the idea is working.
Yeah. I think the biggest things I've seen in the work I've done for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention over the last 20 plus years is the power of encouraging peer-to-peer conversations like you just mentioned, and the power of simply asking somebody if they're okay and understanding it's okay to ask that question. Because I think a lot of people, more so now, but I think earlier on, years, maybe 5, 7, 10 years ago, people didn't feel like it was okay to ask somebody that question. You gave some examples. I mean, what have you seen in terms of this power of giving permission to ask, are you okay? Have you seen that open up, opportunities for, people to have these conversations that I don't think they were having, 5 years ago or even longer than that?
It's interesting, right? So we're both on kind of the other side of this, right? And I think once you are on the other side of it, you learn about how many more people are there. But that, having been through it, right, it changes things.
Mm-hmm.
I have vocabulary that I never had before.
Yes.
And I have the ability to give voice to things that I never knew I would be doing, right? But even on a personal level, when I'll sit down and present this to a group of guys, who have probably never had these conversations with one another, then all of a sudden, just by virtue of creating that space, giving people permission, because that's what the idea is meant to do, right? Just give permission. And you said it too, like it's creating space for vulnerability. And, again, another kind of hook for this idea is, just like you're saying, right, we've been working to break stigmas down for a long time around this. And now we have billboards that are out there that say, like, you are not alone and it's okay to not be okay. And that stuff's great. It's doing a lot of work. But our observation was ultimately that's still putting the onus on the person who might be struggling to raise their hand and be vulnerable.
That's right.
If I'm driving down the road and I see a billboard that says you are not alone and I'm alone in my car, like I am alone.
Right.
It's just me. So our thing was like, let's just finish the sentence. You're not alone because I'm right here beside you. And our thought was like, let's just get everybody in on the dialogue. If 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 people are struggling, what are the other 2 in 3 or 3 in 4 people doing? Let's just get them in the mix. And if we get them in the mix, we can just work to try and create space for vulnerability by giving people permission. And I think our idea gives people permission to participate in the conversation. And starting the conversations gives the person who's struggling permission to be vulnerable. And that's kind of like the chain. And, I know sometimes it sounds like that's a long way to get a sandwich, but it is pretty direct, right? Like if 75% of people who maybe aren't acutely struggling with something, or 66, the numbers are staggering how many people are in need of support at any given moment. But if everybody feels like they can participate in a conversation, it would change things. So that's our contribution to try and help break these stigmas down. So to your question, I see it happen all the time. Now we're at the point where we've had young men and women who have been participating for a couple of years now. So we thought it would be cool to go and just get little video testimonials from them. Hey, just tell us about your experience with this. And to a person, they say, like, I've brought this to, so now a lot of these kids are in college, right? Kids are the same age, and they're bringing it to their college communities. And they're like, it's changed the culture of our team or of our class because we've created space to have conversations that maybe we couldn't have before. And it's those young men and women playing it back to us, telling us about how this simple idea has changed how they interact with their teammates, classmates, friends. And that's it, right? It's just the stories coming back to us. Or like I said, my personal experience when I sit around a table with a bunch of guys and I say, so what's this idea all about? And everybody, whatever, it's lunch or it's for a beer or whatever. And the next thing you know, we're in a conversation where 5 guys are sharing their feelings and will then comment, I've never talked about this before. It happens all the time. That's how it comes back around. I'm just one person, right? So it's just those interactions that I have with individuals that come back and let me know that it's Powerful.
Yeah, well, great impact. And although you're one person, that group that you're impacting, then they use it, and then they, and it has that butterfly effect, which is,
Exactly.
fantastic. One thing I want to talk about is, for those who have dealt with deep loss, a lot of times birthdays, anniversaries, the date of their passing, they're often extremely somber, but you've turned those days into moments of memory and days to revisit your mission, and Hayden, what advice do you have for those who are dealing with those types of days? How can they kind of frame it a little differently, like you have, to turn it in and revisit the mission?
I appreciate the question, and it's less advice and more just me sort of talking about my own personal experience with it. Because, grief is such a personal thing. You've experienced it. Everybody's experienced it. And everybody has to navigate it on their own path. And I think for every individual, it takes different shapes and forms. And even at that, those shapes and forms are always changing and evolving. People talk different metaphors like rising tides and that kind of thing, and you have to surf the wave. And it does, right? It comes and it hits in different ways. My observation on it, personally, my experience with it is there are things that those like dates on the calendar, at first I thought of them almost like landmines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is problematic, it's coming. But then it sort of shifted and started to see that as like, okay, these are sort of the known parts of the grief, right? Those dates come every year, and it's how we approach them, and take some preparing, no question. Obviously, birthdays, holidays, the day of Hayden's passing, those are the ones that are out there. An amazing thing is now every holiday, every birthday, every day of his passing, we still have so many people who reach out and say, we're thinking of you, we're thinking of Hayden. And that's uplifting, right? Like that makes a difference. On Hayden's birthday, it was January 12th. We chose that as the date that we incorporated, the foundation.
Right.
And we used that as a time to reflect on how this idea is moving forward and growing in much the same way that it would have reflected on how Hayden's was growing and moving through the world. And, on the day of his passing, we always just take them. I'm sure so many people probably do the same thing, right? We just take some time for ourselves as a family to do something together, oftentimes something that we know Hayes would have enjoyed, those kinds of things. And I think there are things you can prepare for, but I'm sure most people, and you might have this experience yourself as well, it's the things that you can't prepare for that just catch you, like driving down the road, passing something around a corner that you didn't remember was there, and remembering something. There's this place we go to Maine. My wife's from Maine. We go to Maine a lot, and we had all those like childhood vacations there. And one day I turned the corner and I passed the ropes course. Dumbest place in the world. We went there once, never went there again. But like with that came all those memories associated with that place. And those are the things, you just can't prepare for. And those are the things that get you. And I think the only thing you can do, this has been I think another thing that happened in the beginning here, I think when those moments happen, right? Like you have your body, your mind, you have an instant reaction to the moment.
Uh-huh.
You can't control it. And I think everybody experiences those moments. The literal moment of loss. It hits different.
That's right.
And the way it hit us, and maybe we're lucky for it, both my wife and I, and maybe my daughter to an extent, but my wife and I, our intuition was to just go to it, not fight it. And at the same time, I know there's part of you that wants to fight it, right? Like you don't want to. And I think I realized that anything, people know this to be true, anything you push in is coming back out with at least 2x the force.
Right.
Whatever it is, just allowing it to come has been my strategy.
Yeah, great.
Again, like I said, it's just my own personal experience. Whether that's a good plan or not, I don't know. But it's how it's enabled us to get through the day, and it's how we get to kind of live with this idea and move it forward.
Yeah. Great perspective, and thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that. I appreciate it. We end each of our episodes or shows on a joyful note, because this is the Midland Money Mindset, and we ask each of our guests the same final question. I'm going to do the same for you today, Rob, and that is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Boy, I didn't know that was the final question for everyone. And it's early, so I really haven't gotten out of the gates that much. But I will tell you, what I'm carrying with me today is this experience that I just had last week, where my daughter and I were able to go on a little bit of a road trip, and she's a junior in high school, and we got to look at some colleges. And we got to spend some time in some nice weather. We're here in the Northeast, where it's still gray and rainy and cold. And we were just outside in the sun. Just being out and around and spending time with her was an amazing experience. I reflected on that experience this morning as I was just getting ready to start my day, and it genuinely gave me joy. It did. I appreciate that question. And just reflecting on that, like that was the experience I had this morning, keeping those, what I know will be a memory that both she and I will have for our whole lives. Like having had the chance to do that was amazing, and I'm grateful for it. And I have been reflecting on that today.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was reflecting in the cold weather and not the nice warm weather.
Well, I think it makes it that much sweeter. Yeah. It makes it that much sweeter, just the memory of like warmth and sun. Yeah. So, that, yes, I think you're right. There might be like a little bit of an environmental response there. But I should say, too, like I wanted to say, and I was really looking forward to having this conversation, spending this time with you. And I also wanted to say thank you for everything that you've done in this space. Like I know from, like I said, we've had a shared orbit, maybe not spent a ton of time together along the way, but I've always known about the work that you've been doing in this space. And huge hat tip. Like that's, like you said, it's been a long time. It's been decades, and you guys are making an impact. And we draw a lot of motivation and inspiration from seeing people making a difference. So a hat tip to you and everything.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. And we're going to have all of your information, the information about HT40 and the shoulder check showcase in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about the showcase, learn more about HT40, learn more about you, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
Definitely. Shouldercheck.org is our main site. All the information about how people, so the showcase information will be there, links to tickets, all that kind of good stuff. But then more deeply, we have 2 pages on there. It says get inspired and get involved. So you can see what other folks are doing with the program on the Get Inspired page. And then on the Get Involved page, there's lots of tools, downloadables, all that kind of good stuff. And then also contact. And the contact comes straight to me and the one other person that works on this every day, all day. So that's the main, spot online. And then our handle on Instagram is The Shoulder Check, because, Shoulder Check was already taken by someone. Weightlifting person who is doing great shoulder work. So we're The Shoulder Check on Instagram. And again, we use that to basically chronicle everything we're doing with the program. It's awesome. And there you see like all other people and what they're doing with the idea. So those are 2 main spots. Right. And we're always there on the other side of it. If anyone hits contact, reach out, that kind of stuff. We're always here.
And can you share one last time the date of the event, when that's going to be, and the location, so listeners have that ready to go?
You bet. It's July 30th at Sacred Heart University. It's the Martyr Family Arena. It's the newest and nicest Division I hockey arena in the country. It's an amazing facility. The folks there at the building have been super supportive, helping us bring this idea to life. The idea is from 4 to 6. It's kind of like what happens if you brought like a summer fair to a college campus. Midway, lots of stuff to do, awesome family experience, players there signing autographs, all that good stuff. So that's from like 3:30 to 6. And then we go on inside and take our seats. And from 6 to 8, we have our on-ice portion, which will be awesome. Think of it like, that summer vibe meets an NHL All-Star game. It was some fun stuff along the way.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Rob, for joining us today. And I really appreciate you taking out the time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Oh, thanks to you as well. Looking forward to talking to you again soon.
If today's conversation moved you, don't let it end here. Rob Thorsen reminded us that connection isn't complicated, it's intentional. A simple check-in, a moment of presence, a hand on someone's shoulder, it can change a life. In a world that's never been more connected digitally, but more disconnected emotionally, this episode is your reminder that you have the power to make a difference starting today. And maybe the most powerful takeaway, you never know who needs it most. Rob Thorsen, the HT40 Foundation, and the Shoulder Check Initiative can be found across most social media platforms. All the information needed to find them can be found in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Midland Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?
The opinions voiced in the Midland Money Mindset Show with Lawrence Sprung are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy ensures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Guests on the Midland Money Mindset Show are not affiliated with CWM LLC.